Hi, I'm Julie. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Simply Saturday. I'm going to show you another card that is fast and easy to make, but today's card does require some die cutting. So if you're super new to crafting and you have not yet chosen to get a Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, then you might have to pivot a little bit with some of the steps in this. We are going to be using this large circle from Stylish Shapes. And also we are using stamps and a die from Hooray for Surprises. So while it is a fast and easy card, it does require some die cutting. I imagine if you had a large enough punch or if you have a steady enough hand to cut a very nice circle, then you could probably do that instead. All right, let's begin. We are doing this card in Pretty in Pink. That is our primary color, and white. So this just has a lovely look, very sweet and soft. Let me tell you about the pieces that we're working with. So I have my piece of Pretty in Pink cardstock. This is 8.5 by 5.5, and I have already scored and folded it at 4¼ inches. Then I have a piece of white cardstock. This is 4 inches by 5¼ We need one of those for the inside panel, and we also need one of those for the front of the card. All right, again, 4 inches by 5¼ Then I have a piece of cardstock, and this can be regular weight white cardstock or it can be thick. It doesn't really matter. This piece measures 3¾ inches square. So we're going to be actually creating our main focal piece on this little square. And then I've got some Designer Series paper, and this is in the In Color packet of 6x6 papers. And again, this is Pretty in Pink. So the sizes of your strips don't matter too much. What you want are 5 strips of varying patterns. My largest strip is 1 inch, and I have 2 of those. Then I have 2 that are 3/4 inch, and I have 1 that is 1/2 inch. Again, that part is not super critical. Anywhere between like 3/8 and 1 inch, just 5 strips of varying patterns. And then they are 4 inches long, all of them. Okay, so I think that I've kind of mixed and matched. Yes, you can see that this polka dot paper on the other side is that print. So I'm using one of each of those. And then this floral has the stripe on the back. So I'm using the floral and the stripe. And then I think I will also use this extra piece with the polka dots. So that print is doubled. So instead of 5 actual prints, I have 4, and then one of them is doubled. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to glue the strips of Designer Series paper onto this square. And I would like for you to prepare for that in one of 2 ways. If you're stamping with your glass mat underneath your surface, then there's no need to do anything extra special, because if any glue gets onto the glass mat, you can use your little cloth and easily clean it off. If you're not working on the glass mat, then I suggest that you reach for your silicone mat like this. I'll go ahead and use this even though I don't need to, in case those of you crafting along with me are using the silicone mat. Okay, so I'm going to lay out my strips of paper in roughly the order that I think I'm going to want them. And so I'm just going to play with it for a minute and see. That's one of my widest. This is this one. I think I want that one here, which means I'm going to spread that one, get that one away from there. I don't want those 2 widest ones close to each other though. Let's switch that around, and maybe something like that. Okay, I think we'll just go with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the piece that is basically the middle piece. I'm going to glue it down to the square. So I'm going to aim for the center of my square and try to get it nice and straight. The edges will hang off, and that's why it's helpful to have either your glass mat or your silicone mat behind it, because some of that extra glue may go out on the edges. All right, so here's the first stripe. I'm going to straighten this up. I want everything in my vision to kind of be straight. All right, and I'm just going to aim for the middle of the white square and glue that down. Okay, from there it doesn't matter. You can build to the top or to the bottom. So let's go ahead. I'll just build going towards the bottom at this point. Now what I'm going to do is lay this on here and leave a tiny little gap. Okay, not measuring it, I'm just eyeballing, but I have a little gap so that the white cardstock is showing through. And we're going to continue with that same process. So I'll put this one on, leave a little gap. Now what's interesting is kind of regardless of the size of strips that you chose to start with, this will just end up working, and the size of the strips aren't really going to matter too much. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, we're going to go with this one next. All right, what I'm trying to say by that is I'm going to have this last piece. Right now I'm on the second to the last. I'm leaving a little gap. I'm going to have this last piece on here, but you can see that the space that's going to be glued on the strip is actually larger. It doesn't matter, okay? It's just going to end up hanging off, and that's totally fine. This is why I said it's not critical that you do the certain size strips. You just want about those sizes so that you have enough to completely cover your white square. Okay, so we've got our pieces now all in place. Get my little white gap showing there. All right, and then this is where it was important to use the silicone mat or be stamping on your glass mat, because right now I know that this is kind of stuck to it and I'm able to peel it off, and any extra glue went onto here instead of perhaps onto a different piece of paper and got stuck. So that's a safe way to do this. I'm going to move that out of the way. Now we're going to trim. If you want to do this with your paper trimmer, you totally can. I'm just going to take scissors and I'm going to trim all those edges so that I have my nice clean square back. Now, I said that, and you're going to see me do that step. Technically, if you wanted to skip this step, you could, because when we get ready to die cut this, it wouldn't really matter if these have the clean edges. They're all going to fall away anyway. But I'm going to trim mine away. I kind of like it to look all nice and tidy to start with. But this step could completely be skipped. In fact, maybe when you do your second card, you would choose to skip this step after trying it once and kind of knowing what we're doing. Okay, I got one more edge here. Get right up next to it. There we go. All right, all those little bits, they're a little sticky from the glue. Let's see if I can move them out of the way. All right, at this point, we are ready to do our die cutting. So I'm going to take my large circle from Stylish Shapes. I'm going to place it right here onto my piece, and I'm going to run this through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine so that we can cut out the circle. And I do want this lined up quite centered, and the reason for that is a little bit of a surprise that is still yet to come. But what I mean is, like, don't slide it way up this way in order to make your stripes look a certain way. You really want this circle centered right on this piece. So I'm going to come down a little bit lower, about like that. Okay, I'm just going to step aside outside of the camera view and do my die cutting. All right, so hang in there with me for just a moment. while I am cutting my circle. All right, there we have it. And as you can see, I have this fantastic printed circle. It looks so great. All right, so this is the piece that we're going to use, but don't throw this piece away because I do have a surprise regarding this piece. So hold on to that, set it aside. All right, let's build our card. I have my card base. I'm going to go ahead and put the white panel on the front. And I'm looking all around all four edges for a pretty even border. That's what I'm going for. And then this white piece is going to go on the inside, but I am going to do some stamping on that. And so let's go ahead and do that. I'm using Pretty in Pink ink, and I'm using this stamp. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this is from Hooray for Surprises. All right, so this is going to go on the inside. And I like the center greeting to be slightly higher than, or the inside greeting to be slightly higher than center. But you could put this right in the middle. All right, there we've got that, very nice and soft. And I can put this on the inside of the card. Now, of course, I know that you're 2 steps ahead of me at this point, and you are already thinking, well, I could do this with any paper. Yes, you could. Any color scheme. Yes, you could. I think a very cute gift would be a packet of 4 or 6 of these cards, perhaps each one in a different color. You could even change up the sayings so that you had a birthday and a thank you and a thinking of you, maybe a get well, but all with the same design. All right, there's the inside. Back to our front. We're going to put this together now. All right, I did die cut 2 other things before we began. And let me wipe this off. It's got a little bit of stickiness to it, probably from a previous project I was working on. All right. So before I began today, I did go ahead and die cut a Pretty in Pink and a white flower. Here's the die. And that is a coordinating die from this stamp set, okay? So I cut those out. We're going to use them as decorations on our card. Okay, we'll take the circle. We're going to place it right here on the card. Not quite in the center, just slightly higher than center. I'm having to shake my glue. It's getting right down to the end. I'm going to have to replace it. Okay, I'm going to straighten out my card, and I want this as straight as possible since those strips of paper are going across this way. We really want it as straight as we can so that it looks pleasing to your eye. All right, that is now in place. I'll take that little white flower and glue it down. And for the pink one, I think we'll pop it up with some dimensionals. It looks like there's a little, I don't know, there's a little something on here. I'm going to reach for my sand eraser and just see if that'll come off. Oh yeah, that came off, right off. Okay, so I'm going to flip this over, and I've got some mini dimensionals here, which are actually completely gone. And so I am down to using the edge pieces. So I'm just going to cut 3 tiny strips. Once these are used up, I don't like to throw this out. I like to use it because all of these parts are still good. They're just not neat little hexagon shapes. All right, so I'll position these kind of in a triangle, basically, on the back of my flower. and then attach it to the card front. Let me peel those backing pieces off. One, two, three. All right, and then this one is just going to slightly overlap the white flower that's already in place, just slightly. Then we'll take some white twine, and I have 2 lengths. I just eyeballed these. I didn't measure them, but I will let you know they're about 9 inches long. And with the 2 lengths together, I'm going to make a bow. Not too hard. Are any of you bow challenged? Do you feel like, oh, I don't even want to bother trying to make a bow? It can be frustrating. If you are, you could simply just use a knot. You don't have to tie a bow. All we want is some kind of a little twine embellishment or treatment here on our card. All right, I'm going to attach this with a glue dot. So I'm going to get that kind of balled up here on the end of my Take Your Pick tool, and then place it right about here. And squishing the center or the knot part of my bow right into that glue dot so it will stick really well. All right, we will trim these in a moment, but let's just go ahead and move them out of the way for a second while we add our final stamp right here, also with Pretty in Pink ink. And I'm going to, instead of right in the center, I'm going to move it a little bit over to the right. Like so. And now I can determine how long I want these. I do want them a little bit longer than maybe I would use on some cards. I want them to drape down close to my words. So I'm only going to start with a long trim like that. And let's see how that looks. Yep, I'm going to go with that. All right, the final touch is going to be a couple of little pink rhinestones. And in order to get those, I'm using the Rhinestone Jewels. And I'm going to take my dark Pretty in Pink Stampin' Blend, and while the gems are still on the little backing sheet, I'm just going to color them with the marker. Now this is a very subtle look, but they definitely look pink now. I think the clear ones without coloring them would also look just lovely on this card, but it was kind of fun to do the pink ones this time. So those are colored in pink. It dries pretty fast. And now I can pick one of these up and add 1, 2, and how high should we go? And 3. All right, give those a good press down. And look at our lovely, sweet, fast and easy card for today. You are simply amazing. Hope your birthday is wonderful. I love the pink and the white, just the little tiny embellishments really pop. But what about that amazing little circle trick that we've done today? Now, as I mentioned, I said don't go throwing this piece away, because I have a surprise for you in the next episode of Simply Saturday. So be sure and tune back in next Saturday for what we are going to do with this piece. Until then, happy stamping.